I was stirring oat milk into my coffee when my phone buzzed across the marble counter, a soft vibration that somehow felt louder than the Christmas carols drifting from the cafe speakers downstairs. It was December 24th, and the city glowed outside my window. Fairy lights tangled in trees, snow melting on sidewalks, couples laughing beneath red scarves. I almost didn't look at the notification, but the preview froze me. Tag: Best Christmas ever with my favorite people. My thumb hesitated before opening it. There they were, my family. All of them. Around the old oak dining table, the one I used to help my mom decorate every Christmas Eve. Same garland, same crystal plates. Only this time, without me. The caption hit harder than the photo. So glad everyone could make it this year. Everyone. Except the daughter, who'd been told Christmas was cancelled. For a second, I just stared at the screen. My reflection flickered faintly against the glass. Silk blouse, subtle lipstick, that polished version of me who had learned to smile through anything. But inside, something cracked. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet, familiar ache. I set the phone down beside my untouched coffee and whispered, "So that's how it is." Outside, snow began to fall again, soft, indifferent, beautiful. The world didn't care that my family had erased me from their perfect holiday picture. But this year, maybe I finally did. I can still remember the last Christmas I spent in that house, the one before everything fell apart. It was 3 years ago, in that same living room with the gold tinsel and cinnamon-scented candles. I was 25, just back from New York, nervous and hopeful. I'd been working at a small startup, pulling 80-hour weeks for barely enough to pay rent, but I was proud of it. It was mine. Mom, though, didn't see it that way. She'd poured herself another glass of red and said, "Olivia, you're too smart to waste your time chasing dreams. You could come back home, get a real job, maybe settle down." Dad didn't look up from carving the turkey. "She's always been stubborn," he muttered. The words weren't sharp, but they cut anyway. My brother, Ethan, chuckled, the golden child, the one who did everything right. He had just bought a house and gotten engaged to a woman my mom adored. I remember sitting there, trying to smile, while my chest tightened like I was holding in a scream. "Maybe I just want something different," I said quietly. Mom's eyes softened for a second, then hardened again. "Different doesn't mean better, sweetheart. You'll understand when you grow up." I'd already grown up, just not in a way they approved of. Later that night, I went out to the porch to breathe. My grandmother, Evelyn, the only person who ever truly saw me, followed. She wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders and pressed a small silver locket into my hand. "Keep this," she whispered. "When people forget your worth, you remember yourself." Inside was a tiny photo of her, smiling in black and white. The next morning, we argued again. I told them I wasn't coming back next year unless they could respect who I was. Mom cried. Dad said I was being dramatic. Ethan called me selfish. So I left, not slamming doors, not screaming. Just gone. I remember the sound of my boots crunching over frozen snow, the cold biting through my coat. I held that locket so tight my hand shook. It wasn't anger that kept me walking, it was survival. That night, I promised myself one thing. I'd build a life that no one could erase me from. Starting over wasn't glamorous. It never is. My first apartment in Brooklyn was a shoebox, one window, a flickering radiator, and walls thin enough to hear the neighbor's TV through. I used to sit cross-legged on the floor with my laptop balanced on an overturned box, eating instant noodles while sketching marketing ideas for small businesses that could barely pay me. But every time I felt like giving up, I'd open Grandma Evelyn's locket. Remember your worth. I started freelancing, then networking, then, by some miracle, landed a part-time gig with a boutique fashion brand that needed someone to handle their social media. I worked nights, weekends, everything in between. I watched tutorials, read business blogs, learned analytics until the numbers made sense. That's when I met Clara Bennett, the creative director. She was the kind of woman I'd always wanted to be, sharp, graceful, and fearless. When she saw me pulling another all-nighter, she laughed softly and said, "If you're going to give your life to something, make sure your name ends up on the door." Her words changed everything. With her mentorship, I built a portfolio, pitched campaigns, and soon after, launched my own boutique digital agency. At first, I didn't tell anyone, not even my old college friends. Success felt fragile, like glass that could shatter if I spoke too loud. There were nights I cried from exhaustion, mornings I doubted every decision. But then came the small victories. My first real client, my first profitable month, the first time a brand asked for me by name. I remember standing in a rented office space one evening, watching the sunset paint the city gold. For the first time in years, I felt steady. I wasn't chasing approval anymore. I was building something real. Still, I kept my online life quiet. My social media showed brunches, coffee, the occasional workday post. Nothing flashy, nothing personal. If my family saw it, they'd think I was doing fine, but not too fine. And that's how I liked it. When Grandma Evelyn passed away the next year, I went home for the funeral. It was brief, polite. Mom hugged me, but it felt like hugging a memory. No one asked about my business, and I didn't offer. Some truths weren't meant for small talk. After that, I focused on growing, hiring 2 employees, landing my first 6-figure client, then buying a place of my own. It wasn't the life my parents imagined for me. It was better. But no matter how high I climbed, I never stopped checking that locket. It reminded me that the strongest things we build often come from the ruins of what we lost. And still, every December, I waited for that one call, an invitation, a message, a sign that maybe things had changed. It never came. Until this year, when I found out that Christmas had never been canceled. It just didn't include me. I spent that night pacing my apartment, the city twinkling beyond the window, like it was mocking me. Every few minutes, I'd glance at my phone again, at the smiling faces frozen in that picture. Mom's red dress. Dad's forced grin. Ethan's fiancé holding a glass of champagne like she'd earned her place there. For hours, I debated texting them. Something sarcastic. Something furious. But what would it change? By midnight, I knew what I needed to do. The next morning, Christmas Day, I got dressed like I was heading to war, but my armor was silk and confidence. A cream coat, black heels, red lipstick. Power in quiet form. I drove 2 hours north to my hometown, snow swirling against the windshield like tiny ghosts of every argument I'd left behind. When I pulled up to my parents' house, I almost laughed. The driveway was full. The porch lights were strung up in the same pattern I used to hang every year. Christmas canceled. I whispered under my breath. Sure. I rang the bell. The door opened, and for a moment, silence. Mom stood there, mouth slightly open, still holding a serving spoon. Behind her, laughter echoed from the living room. Olivia, she breathed, stunned. We didn't think you'd come. I didn't think there was a Christmas to come to, I said evenly, stepping inside. The house looked like a Norman Rockwell painting. Candles. Music. Perfect smiles frozen mid-surprise. My father stood, his face stiffening. Ethan whispered something to his fiancée, who avoided eye contact. For a moment I felt that old ache, the one that used to make me shrink. But then I looked around, the designer coats on the rack, the chatter, the surface-level charm, and I realized I didn't belong here anymore. Not because I wasn't enough, but because I'd outgrown their version of enough. Mom started to ramble. It was last minute. We thought you were busy, you never said. I set my purse on the counter and met her eyes. You told me Christmas was canceled, that everyone was skipping this year, but social media says otherwise. Her expression faltered, guilt flickering behind her mascara. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just smiled, the kind of smile that unnerves people because it hides power. It's okay. I didn't come here for an apology. Ethan frowned. Then why did you come? I gestured toward the window, where my car sat idling in the driveway. To drop off a little something. He followed my gaze, confused. What's that supposed to mean? I pulled out a sleek, white envelope and handed it to Dad. Inside was a printed document, a sponsorship agreement. My company's logo gleamed at the top. You're working with Greenpoint Manufacturing, right? I said. They just signed a 2-year digital marketing contract with me, my agency. The room went silent. Mom blinked. You own that company? Founded it. 3 years ago. I glanced around the room, letting the weight of that truth settle. So, technically, I'll be handling your firm's online campaigns starting next month. Ethan looked like he'd swallowed ice. Wait, you're serious? Very. Dad finally spoke, voice low. Why didn't you ever tell us? Because you never asked. For the first time, no one had anything clever to say. The silence wasn't awkward, it was heavy. The kind that comes when people realize the person they underestimated built an entire world without them. Mom tried to smile. We're proud of you, sweetheart. I tilted my head, almost kindly. I didn't come here for pride either. I just wanted you to know, the daughter you forgot to invite didn't need your table to find her place. And with that, I turned toward the door, the faint jingling of my keys the only sound in the room. I made it halfway down the porch steps before Mom's voice stopped me. Olivia, wait. Something in her tone, soft, trembling, made me pause. I turned around. She stood there in the doorway, still clutching that serving spoon like it could hold her together. Behind her, the family hovered awkwardly, watching the daughter they'd erased finally walk away. I didn't mean for it to happen like this, she said. You have to understand, things just got complicated. We thought you were busy. We didn't want to make you feel obligated. I laughed quietly. You didn't want me to feel obligated to my own family? She flinched. I took a slow step forward. For years, I thought if I worked harder, smiled longer, said less, maybe you'd see me differently, I said. But it was never about effort. It was about control. You wanted me to fit in your picture. The one where I'm small enough not to make anyone uncomfortable. Ethan's fiancée whispered something, but he silenced her with a look. Dad crossed his arms, jaw tight. You're being unfair, he said. No, Dad. I replied, calm but firm. You were unfair when you decided silence was easier than support. I took a breath, then placed the locket Grandma Evelyn had given me into Mom's hand. Her eyes widened. She told me once, when people forget your worth, you remember it yourself. I held her gaze. Well, I did. And now that I have, things are going to be different. Mom's lip trembled. What do you mean? I'm not cutting you off, I said softly. But if you want me in your life, there are conditions. Ethan snorted. Conditions? Yes. I turned to him first. You stop treating me like competition. You've had every opportunity handed to you. Try using it to build something instead of breaking someone. He looked away, embarrassed. I faced Dad. You stop speaking for everyone, especially Mom. She deserves to have a voice that isn't filtered through yours. Dad stiffened, but said nothing. Then I looked back at Mom. And you start being honest. No more perfect photos that hide imperfect truths. No more pretending everything's fine when it's not.
If you miss me, say it.
If you're proud, say that too. But don't erase me to keep up appearances. Tears welled in her eyes, and for the first time in years, I saw her, really saw her, not the woman who needed to be right, but the mother who was scared of being wrong. I can try, she whispered. That's all I'm asking. The cold air stung my cheeks as I exhaled. You don't need to like who I've become, I added, but you're going to respect her. No one spoke for a long time. Then Ethan muttered, Guess we really messed up, huh? I smiled faintly. Guess you did. And then for the first time, I didn't feel small standing there. I felt steady. Whole. Like every version of me, hurt, hopeful, healed, was finally in the same body again. I wasn't asking for acceptance anymore. I was setting the terms for it. It's funny how healing rarely arrives with fireworks. Sometimes it's just quiet, a message here, a small gesture there, moments that begin to stitch the broken pieces back together. Over the next few months, that's what happened. Mom started calling again, not to lecture, not to ask for updates she could brag about, but just to talk. Sometimes she'd send pictures of her garden or ask for a new recipe. Once she even said, I miss your laugh. Those words sat in my chest for hours after. Dad softened too, in his own way. He sent me an email, short, awkward, but genuine, saying he was proud of the company I'd built. He didn't say he was sorry, but I didn't need him to. The silence between us was finally turning into space where honesty could live. And Ethan, he came around last. One night, he called just to tell me he'd quit the job our father pushed him into and was finally pursuing photography, something he'd once mocked me for doing. You were right, he admitted quietly. Different doesn't mean wrong. By spring, things weren't perfect, but they were real. And real was more than I'd ever had before. That Christmas photo, the one that shattered me, still sits in my camera roll. I don't delete it. Sometimes I look at it just to remind myself how far I've come. Because now, when I see those faces, I don't see rejection. I see the proof that I survived it. Last week, as I was preparing my company's holiday campaign, Mom called again. We're hosting Christmas this year, she said softly. Everyone wants you there. And we mean everyone. For a second, my throat tightened. Then I smiled. I'll think about it, I told her. And I meant it, not out of bitterness, but peace. Because I finally had a choice. That night, I opened my dresser drawer and found Grandma Evelyn's locket. I hadn't worn it since that snowy day. I ran my thumb over the tiny photograph inside, her smiling eyes frozen in time. Guess I finally did it, Grandma, I whispered. I remembered. I clasped it around my neck and turned toward the window. The city lights shimmered below, glowing gold and white, like they were celebrating with me. They canceled Christmas once, but I learned how to celebrate myself every single day after.